power and presence, that source and substance that we call God, that is the essence and foundation, the core of your being. That essence that is whole and true and real and complete at every moment in time. Breathing into this spiritual awareness, I invite you to think about who you came here to be and how you came to live. Take in the intention, I came to live in dynamic fullness. Make that an affirmation. I am living in dynamic fullness. I unleash the dynamic vibrancy at the core of my being. I allow it to burst forth, and I live freely in my life, energized by the very spiritual essence of who I am. I recognize I have also come here to live a full life. That I need not compare my experience to any other time in my life or to anybody else. I breathe into the fullness that is at the very core of my being. And I allow that fullness to radiate through every thought, word, and action. I invite you to affirm again, I am living in dynamic fullness. With gratitude and affirmation, I invite you to go into this presence in the silence with that intention of understanding the depth and the breadth, the vibrancy of that fullness. As we enter the silence for just a few moments here today, enter the silence. recognize the dynamic nature of my being, the fullness of my being. As I take a few more breaths in this awareness. I am living in dynamic fullness. Taking one more breath into that fullness, I invite you to bring some gentle awareness back to your body temple. Maybe starting with fingers and toes, maybe just some gentle movement. Maybe rolling your wrist. Maybe allowing your shoulders to roll one direction and then the other, and maybe adding even in a little stretch to your neck here today. And when you're ready to return to this space, I invite you to open your eyes here today. Wow, how did that happen? I opened my eyes and there's more people here than when I started the meditation. I absolutely love it. I love that. Everybody is exactly where they need to be at exactly the right time today. So thank you for joining me, and good morning. So I hope that experience was good for you. So today we're going to continue this series into living with intention. And when we talk about living with intention, today I'm going to dive into this idea of dynamic fullness. What is dynamic fullness? Well, I'm going to start by saying it's not about filling our appetites, although we're going to do lots of that after service, right? Dynamic refers to the term that is about constant change, an activity, a progress, a constant to and fro of moving forward, right? When we think of dynamism, we think of those people who bring a lot of energy. So it can also refer to someone who has a positive outlook and who is full of energy and new ideas and is bringing those forth. So think about how you might embody that idea of being dynamic. Now, fullness is one of these divine qualities that I strive for myself. So what does that mean? Well, for me, it recognizes that we have the ability to see our wholeness, our completeness, and to live in this imperfect perfectness that we call life. More than that, though, it recognizes that our lives, at least in this human form, are what I like to call a both and. We have our spiritual beingness, which is whole and complete in every moment. It is perfect at every moment in time, just as it is. And we have our human experience, which, let's face it, has some roller coaster ups and downs, right? Has a wide range of experiences and situations and emotions. And when we recognize this dynamic fullness, the idea of fullness, we're saying we are both and at all times, at least while we are in this human form, and both are full of life. Right? So Charles Fillmore often talked about this. Charles Fillmore, for those who might not know, is a co-founder or was a co-founder of the Unity movement. He's kind of considered the father of unity, just as Myrtle Fillmore, his wife, is considered the mother of unity. And he, in his writings, expressed this idea of fullness quite often, especially in his book, Dynamics for Living. So he thought that we could truly express this fullness When we recognize this divine presence, when we recognize this spiritual nature of our being, right? When we recognize that this power, this presence, this source, this substance that we call God underlies all that we do and all of who we are. And I want to share with you a quote because I really like this quote. And I also put it in the email newsletter this weekend. So if you want to get a copy of it, that's a place to get a copy of it. If you want to write it down today, I welcome you to do that. He said, "We turn on the life current by means of thoughts and words." Well, I spoke about this 2 weeks ago in our message on expressing creativity, this idea that we are creators, right? But he goes on to say that we can have the fullness of life by realizing that we live in a sea of abundant, omnipresent, eternal life. He's recognizing that spiritual nature, right? He goes on to say, and by refusing to allow any thought to come in that stops the consciousness of the universal life flow. We live and move and have our being and mind life. What does it mean, though, to refuse to allow thoughts to come in and stop the flow? I talked about this 2 weeks ago because it certainly doesn't mean that Charles Fillmore ignored our humanness. It certainly doesn't mean that we're going to stop subconscious thoughts from bubbling up into our minds, that we're going to stop all human emotion. That is not the point. The point is making the conscious choice not to allow that human experience, especially if it's a difficult one, especially if it's something that's unpleasant, right? We're not going to stop that from letting us see our spiritual nature. We're going to continue with this idea of both and. We're going to recognize both and in every moment. And that is really what he's talking about here. So to live from a state of fullness means that I'm attentive to my thoughts and my words. It means that I'm attentive to my emotions. I'm attentive to what I'm creating and bringing about. And at the same time, I'm not going to allow my light to be hidden under a bushel. I'm not going to obscure my spiritual nature. It means that I'm recognizing my spiritual nature and my human experience. I strive each day to live from this fullness. And I don't think the point of it is to let go of our human experience while we're living it. If so, I don't know that Jesus would have ever had the turmoil that he had in the Garden of Gethsemane before he faced his arrest and crucifixion. If he was so enlightened that he was beyond human, why would we get a glimpse into his humanness in that moment? It tells us that it is a both and. So I'm going to share with you 3 invitations today. 3 invitations into living more from that dynamic fullness. And I want to express that these are merely invitations. Take what works for you, leave the rest. And this by no means talks about all spiritual practices. So always I recommend prayer and meditation be a foundation of what you do. I always recommend that. Whatever form prayer looks like for you, whatever form meditation looks like for you, I invite that spiritual contemplation. But today I'm going to invite you to take on 3 considerations. And with all considerations, if we're moving dynamically, it means releasing the things that we no longer need and embracing the new. So I'm going to invite you, first and foremost, to consider releasing comparisons and embrace watering your own grass. What does this mean? I love this phrase, watering your own grass. So when you note comparisons arising, we compare all the time. We compare to our earlier lives. We compare to other people's situations, other people's circumstances. We do this all the time. So I'm going to invite you, when you note these comparisons arising in you, be it you're comparing your health to when you were in your teens or 20s or 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s or whatever it is, right? If you're comparing your energy levels to some energy levels you had in your youth, if you're comparing your wealth to somebody else's wealth, if you're comparing your financial circumstances to theirs, if you're comparing your success and your achievement to what they have succeeded in and achieved, I'm going to invite you to take note of that with gentle awareness to say, hey, that's a comparison. Right now I'm comparing. What happens when we compare, though? When we compare ourselves to somebody else, what does that tell us? What does that say to our being? We're not there. We're not worthy. We're not whole. We're not complete. If we are comparing, then we're not accepting our wholeness, our completeness in the moment. So don't shame yourself. You're already doing that. You're already shaming yourself in some way through comparison by saying, I'm not complete. I'm not whole. That's the essence of shame. That's what Brené Brown talks about. Shame is saying I'm bad, whereas guilt is saying I did a bad thing. Right? So shame is that part of us that says we're not whole or complete. So we're already doing that. So I'm going to invite you to release the comparisons. I'm going to invite you to not ignore your human experience, but to tend to it with a gentleness, to become aware of your thoughts and your emotions, and get down to the root of where it comes from. Where does this comparison come from? What is the fear that is inside that I'm nurturing by looking at that as a comparison, by looking at myself as not being whole and complete? Because when we have comparisons, we're watering our weeds, not our grass. Okay? So think about that for a moment. What can you do then to water your own grass? Affirm who you are. Use affirmation statements. Use gratitude practices. Maybe at the end of the night, you sit down and you say, what am I thankful for today? What went well today? What do I like about myself today? How are we shifting to focus on the positive? It doesn't mean that we don't tend to what is hurting us. Rather, it means we simply shift our awareness. So for me, what does this look like? This looks like those times. It doesn't happen as often anymore, but it can still happen, where I compare my health to my 20s or my 30s before I got diagnosed with an autoimmune illness, right? So I can compare my energy levels or my health levels. Well, today I'm 80% of what I was when I was 20, and I'm 90% of what I was when I was 30, right? And what am I doing? I'm lessening my worth and my value in that moment. So rather than compare it to some time before, what I've started to do, if I catch myself in that with gentle awareness, I say I'm 100% of where I need to be today. I accept where I am today. I am whole and complete in this moment. So if you're particularly facing health challenges, this is a good way to adjust your perspective and perception of your own health. So I'm going to invite you to join me in an affirmation for this first invitation. It's a release. Oh, went the wrong way. That happens sometimes. I invite you to join me in a release statement and affirmation, and I'll say it through once, and then I invite you to join me. I release the need to always compare myself and my experiences. I see myself whole, complete, and as a living expression of God. So will you join me in that? I release the need to always compare myself and my experiences. I see myself whole, complete, and as a living expression of God. Thank you. The second invitation I want to share with you today is the idea of releasing mental rigidity and embracing more flexibility. And let me tell you, as someone on the autism spectrum, I struggle with this. As someone who is a recovering perfectionist, I struggle with this, right? So what does it mean when we're mentally rigid? It means that we cling to our expectations, we cling to our attachments, we cling to those routines and habits, those things that we've always done, and we like the way they're done, and we think they should be done that way. What does that last part speak to? We cling to our judgments, we cling to our critiques, we cling to the way that we complain about how bad life is, right? We're clinging to all this negativity, and so I'm going to invite you with gentle awareness to become open to recognize where you are clinging. For me, this is oftentimes about my routines and schedules. So for those who know me, I like to plan well in advance. The spiritual leadership team doesn't always agree with me on that. I'm planning that far in advance, but I'm an advanced planner, right? So I like to plan out, and so I know what's coming next week. I know what my schedule looks like, and while Monday doesn't always look like Tuesday or Wednesday, when I wake up in the morning, I have an idea of how my day is going to go. And I have a well-planned out routine for that day. I know what's going to happen. I know how much time I need for tasks. I know what's going to go smoothly, what I might need help with. I know it. But what happens when those unexpected things come in? Those things I wasn't planning for, right? They come in and they interfere with my well-planned day. And what happens to me? I start to get bristly, right? I start to get agitated. I start to get a little frustrated. Quit calling me while I'm working on my talk. I don't want to talk to you, telemarketer, right? All those times where you get those interruptions and you get bristly, right? So that's my struggle with mental rigidity. That's just one of them. Where's yours? So I invite you just to think about that. Where is it that you're mentally rigid where you could embrace a little bit more flexibility? And be gentle with yourself. Be compassionate. Say, hey, this looks like some of that mental rigidness. I'm acknowledging it. I'm acknowledging the human thoughts, the human feelings that are coming with that. I'm giving myself kindness and love in this moment. Breathing in. Now I want to choose something else. Can I be more flexible in this moment? So I want to just invite you into those areas. What does that look like for you? Does it mean be open to more spontaneous stuff? Does it mean being flexible in how you tell yourself stories about situations or interactions you've had, about those judgments, those critiques, those complaints you've made? Is that true? Is it really true? Right? Is it really true? Maybe you allow yourself to walk into some of the areas where you've resisted before. Maybe it's something that you've wanted to do for a while, or maybe you've been hesitant for. You know those areas where you're like, I don't know if I can do it that way. Maybe it's offering up a little bit more flexibility in those moments. So before we move on to the next invitation, I want to invite you into another release and affirmation statement. And I'll say it, and then I invite you to say it with me. I let go of my rigid thinking. When my life is grounded in divine consciousness, I have the strength to be flexible. Will you say this with me here today? I let go of my rigid thinking. When my life is grounded in divine consciousness, I have the strength to be flexible. Isn't that the truth? So the third invitation I want to share with you here today into this journey of living from the intention of dynamic fullness is release the need to live vicariously through technology and embrace being present in the presence. So what is this not? I'm not telling you to throw your phone away, your computer away, to disconnect your internet. I'm not telling you to do any of that. What I am telling you is just to be aware. What are those ways that you are living vicariously through technology and not being present in the moment? And can you open a little bit more space to be present? This doesn't mean change everything about your day, but oftentimes we live vicariously through our phones, right? I remember a time, not too many years ago, where all I had was a landline, and if I wasn't at home, you didn't get to speak to me, right? I didn't have to attend to a beeping, like vibrating thing on my hip all the time. But how many of you have done this with your phones? How many of you have gone to an event, hit record for the video, and watched it through your phone rather than watching the actual event? How many of you guys have done that? Because I've done that, right? Or how many of you guys have done this? You sit down, maybe with your partner or your friend, to watch TV for the evening, and you're watching TV, and yet you're doing this on your phone. You have 2 points of technology, but you're not giving your attention, your presence to either one of them, at least not fully, right? So what does that look like for you? What's a way you can open a little bit more space to being present? For my husband and I, a lot of times that's when we go out to dinner, we try not to go on our phones, right? When we're having deep, intimate conversations where we're sharing, we try not to go to our phones. Now, there are times where I'll still catch myself on the recliner doing this while the movie's playing. But be gentle with yourself. What are those areas where you can say, hey, I want to lean into this a little bit more to be present and be a presence? What does that look like for you? What might it look like if you lean a little bit more into your dynamic fullness to be present in the moment? Does that mean putting down your phone and going for a nature walk? Does that mean setting up agreements with those who you might be having conversations with your friends, with your family, with your loved ones, when you go out to dinner or go out to lunch? When you're in a group setting, what does that look like for you? Maybe it looks like something that I would like to do, which is, okay, I'm looking at my phone, I'm going through reels. Hey, that looks like a really interesting idea for an art project. Maybe instead of watching somebody else do it, I can go do that, right? So rather than living vicariously through technology and somebody else, consider how you might live a little bit more by being present in a presence. So I'm going to invite you to share with me one more invitation, release, and affirmation statement. And I'll say it, and then I'm going to invite you to say it with me. I release the need to live vicariously through technology. I live in the present moment with divine mind, knowing all is well. Can you say that with me here today? I release the need to live vicariously through technology. I live in the present moment with divine mind, knowing all is well. So, as we conclude today's message, I hope that you will consider how you are already living in dynamic fullness, how you are already the both and. And I hope you will consider, whether it be these techniques or other techniques that you use, how you might lean a little bit further into that dynamic fullness. You might consider one of the practical ways that I shared here today. Release comparisons and embrace watering your own grass. Release mental rigidity and embrace flexibility. Release the need to live vicariously through technology and embrace being present and presence. And before I leave, I want to share with you the words of Dr. John Kabat-Zinn. He's a professor of medicine emeritus at the University of Massachusetts Medical School and the founder of its world-renowned mindfulness-based stress reduction clinic. And he says this about fullness: practice sharing the fullness of your being, your best self, your enthusiasm, your vitality, your spirit, your trust, your openness, above all, your presence. In whatever way you are expressing your dynamic fullness, I invite you to continue that. And I invite you to lean into it a little bit more. I invite you to embrace this idea of both and, that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, and that both can be present simultaneously to live the fullest life. And I also invite you to unfold further into that fullness. So I want to thank you for your time here today. Namaste.
Thank you. Is it on? No, it is.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. That was wonderful. And now, it's time to enter into generosity consciousness. Thank you to all who have continued blessing this spiritual community with your tithes and offerings. We are truly blessed by your giving. If you feel led by Spirit to give today, we invite you to prepare your gift now. If you are being led to make a recurring gift, you can visit our website to set up a monthly gift via PayPal. We now invite you to hold the thought of your gift in your mind and your heart as we say our offering blessing together. Divine love flowing through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. And so it is. Amen.
These are the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive all the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace? Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive? Love, are you ready? Joy, are you ready? Peace, are you ready? Are you ready to receive? These are the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive all the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace? Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive? Compassion, are you ready? Forgiveness, I am ready. Laughter, I am ready. I am ready to receive. Passion, I'm ready. Success, I am ready. Abundance, I am ready. I am ready to receive. These are the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive all the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace? Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive? I am ready to receive. Thank you. Thank you, Unity Singers. We had a big group today. Tim, Rosalita, Ann, Brian, Susan. Thank you all. And myself, yeah. And we thank you all for singing along with us, because we call ourselves the Unity Singers, but we're all one. Unity. All right. Thank you all for joining us today, and those on Facebook Live as well. Thank you. And as we come to the end of our service, before we enjoy food and fellowship, let's join in our circle and we'll sing our peace song together. We might have enough to make the whole get around.